Okay, so today I'd like to talk to you about how I've lived a life full of fear and how one event in 1980 taught me about the power within each of us to embrace the things that we fear the most. So I grew up in London, Ontario with my three brothers, two older and one younger. And we had a happy, normal life, but I realized early on that I was different. I was afraid of everything. I dreaded team sports because I was worried that I was going to strike out or drop the ball or do something stupid, which usually happened. And I was afraid of heights, I was afraid of dogs, and I was especially afraid of spiders. And this fear kept me from doing everything that a normal kid my age would do. In fact, if it weren't for my younger brother, I never would have learned how to ride a bicycle. And that fear, I kept it as I grew older. I kept it in my adolescence and into my adulthood, and it stopped me from doing the things that I wanted to do. And sure, I was safe and comfortable in my little bubble, but I wasn't really living. And this changed partly because of my brother, but also because I wanted to experience the world in the way that he did. He would be able to climb tall trees and do all these amazing things that I was never able to do. And then one day, my mom took my younger brother and I down to Dundas Street in London to watch as a 20-something-year-old man from Winnipeg, Manitoba, attempt to run across the country. And I remember watching this man as he ran down the street with one regular leg and one prosthetic leg, and I was blown away by what I saw. The image of this man stayed with me for the rest of the day and my life. And I learned that this man's name was Terry Fox, and he lost his leg due to cancer. And a year after I saw him, less than a year after I saw him, he actually died because of cancer. And I also learned of the amazing things that he did. In 143 days, he ran 5,373 kilometers. And that amazed me. If you actually stretch that out in a straight line, it would be a greater distance than that between Victoria and Halifax. So I was amazed by this, and I didn't understand how it was possible because he was able to do this facing such real fears and still embrace those and live a life of extreme purpose. This didn't make any sense to me, and people always said he was courageous and fearless. Fearless. As I grew and I thought about his life and I thought about the fears that he must have faced, I realized that fear and courage are not two opposing elements of some sort of spectrum. The absence of one does not imply the presence of the other. And what I learned from this is that fear is actually a measure by which we understand ourselves and understand courage. And so this lesson stayed with me. And when I realized this, I started looking at the world in a different way. Fear was no longer something that kept me in a bubble, kept me protected. It was something that I saw as an opportunity to understand myself and the courage within. And this lesson stayed with me for my entire life. It helped me in my 20s when I decided to jump off a 30-foot cliff in order to conquer my fear of heights. And it helped me into my 30s when I decided to come out to my family. And it still helps me today. When I was 5 years old, I had a recurring nightmare of tarantulas that basically invaded my house and destroyed my entire family. And that nightmare stayed with me my entire life. So at the age of 37, last year, I decided that I was going to dive headfirst into my fear of arachnophobia. Or not a fear of arachnophobia, over my arachnophobia. And it was an exhilarating experience. I remember the first time I saw Natasha that I wasn't even able to go near her without shaking. I was trembling. And it took all my power to get close to her and even sit down next to her and finally open my hands up and allow her to come into my hands. And when she first touched my hands, I freaked. But I couldn't move. I had to focus on what the handlers were telling me, that she was fragile and she was frightened and that she was basically blind without her own web. And all of a sudden, something happened. I started breathing. And I realized that this monster in front of me was not the monster I thought it was. She was a real, living, afraid being. And all of a sudden, I smiled because my fear was replaced with understanding. And that is the point. Fear is a tricky thing. It can either lead us to a life where we are stuck in a bubble and we don't expand and grow, or we can choose to embrace fear and learn about our courage inside and who we really are. So the message I want to leave with you tonight is, what are you afraid of, and why aren't you embracing it? Thank you.